What's up, guys? Another installment of the Football Apex podcast here with Eliot. Now, this week, we're going with this German theme because Leroy Sané apparently made some comments about the Premier League and the Bundesliga. Now, Eliot, what did you think about it? And if you could read the quote out for us so we can
All right,
understand.
I'll read the quote. Before I do this, I just want to make it clear. I actually took some heat for my responses comment with a Liverpool friend of mine. There was a little misconstrued context of what I said, but I'll get into what happened. But first, I'll read the. So I don't know what I don't know how the context of who was interviewing him or what. But he was interviewed or was talking about the difference between the Bundesliga and the Premier League and et cetera. This is the comment from Leo Sané. I played in the Premier League. I know it very well. My judgments would be that the standard of football there have up and downs. No wonder you call it competitive. Here at the Bundesliga, we are straightforward. A giant club that have authority season in and out. When you are CEO, you cannot tolerate a manager to give you a hard time. Bundesliga is a very high standard. If you don't believe it, Tottenham, Hotspur, Chelsea, Arsenal, they know how it's like to play against the Bundesliga outfit, particularly Tottenham, who were smashed by Bayern Munich and got smashed by Leipzig in the same competition. Same as Manchester United, who are heading to the Europa League because of Leipzig. They're doing well in the Premier League, but in Europe, they meet some real deals that send them either to the Europa or out of the competition. Don't forget Manchester City. We also were knocked out by Lyon. Stop looking down on other leagues just because they're not your favorite or they aren't as popular.
Now, that's a common theme because a lot of the English fans, they really scrutinize other leagues. They call them farmer leagues.
Mm-hmm.
And we look at those Barcelona teams of 2010, 2019, I guess. Real Madrid, Bayern, anyone that is not in the Premier League who won the Champions League.
Yeah.
Their domestic competition, they just scrutinize them and call them farmers.
Yeah.
When in reality, it's either the quality of the team that dominates and makes it look inferior,
Yeah.
or it's the fact that maybe the Premier League is just more, I guess, closer in skill set. For example, like an Aston Villa is closer to a Liverpool than a Getafe is to Barcelona.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you think he's trying to say here? Because a lot of people evaluated this as slander against Manchester City. Because Leroy Sané did leave on poor terms with Pep Guardiola. And also, he did always have this affinity for Bayern Munich where he wanted to play for his boyhood club. Even leaving Schalke, which we'll talk about later in their surprise inclusion in this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that he is making the point objective, or do you think he's speaking from the heart and kind of pissed off at Manchester City?
So there's two parts of this story, right? We talked about this in maybe our first or second episode about Timo Werner's comments about the Bundesliga's defense versus the Premier League. That kind of comment is coming from a narration and some bitterness about your former league. He's speaking down on the Bundesliga to prop up the Premier League, to make the argument that I'm actually going to a more difficult league and the Bundesliga isn't as tough as people think. So that's the Timo Werner angle. He's talking about that. He's talking down that league. I think partly to prop himself up because of his early struggles, saying it's not as easy as it was in the Bundesliga. Okay, you know my opinion on that. I think it's utterly ridiculous. But he's making so when Timo Werner makes those comments, he's making it for the intention of kind of taking a shot at the Premier League, shot at the Bundesliga. When Leroy Sané makes these comments, I think he's being objective of what he's saying, because if you see at the beginning of this quote. He is discussing the qualities and of the Premier League and why it's always competitive. Where, like he said, in the other leagues, it's basically molded by a giant, right? But what I think, and yes, he's bringing up data because Arsenal, Chelsea, and Tottenham all have gotten pummeled by some of these Bundesliga sides. There have been other teams in this competition, also from England, who've not done well against the Bundesliga side. So first of all, he's giving respect to his league that he just came from. He's giving context of the European failure, success, however you want to put it, and that's all good. But I think the important thing we need to look at here is the last. I'm gonna read this last part again because this is the important thing, because people lost their minds when they're saying this and they were not looking at exactly the right thing here. The key part of this entire statement is this last part. Stop looking down at other leagues just because they're not your favorite. And I think that's the whole point. Premier League fans, and in fairness, if anyone called the Premier League a farmers league, I would have a problem with that as well. So it's not just the Premier League fans, but when these kind of blanket statements sometimes are glorified by that fan base of that league, and it's not everybody. And I think it's unfair to the people who view Italian football and German football and Spanish football and French football as high quality when it's being represented by a few people who have created the narrative that Italy and Germany specifically are farmer leagues. Okay, but the important thing he's saying here is just because you're a Premier League fan doesn't mean you shouldn't have respect and admiration for what Italian football does and what German football does. Now we can rank our favorite leagues based on what we think. I think the Bundesliga is the best, and I can explain why, but I'm not going to do that here. But I've explained this in the past, and I think that this idea that just because you have a champion at the top of your table consistently, so Juve and Bayern have run those two leagues, but people don't really go down to the details, looking at the fact that in those championships, some of those were held into the last day of the season, and et cetera, et cetera. And I think it's really important that just because you like a particular league or you like a particular style of football doesn't mean the style of football that you might not enjoy doesn't make that league bad or farmer league. What farmer leagues actually is saying is it has one great team and there's no quality anywhere else in the league. So you could say maybe the French league is not up to par, but farmer leagues is such a blanket insult to all these great leagues who are doing the best they can to put out the best product they can. So I think it really comes down to the last bit. It's like if you love the Premier League and that's your style of football, great. You can say it's the best league in the world and that's fine. But you shouldn't look at the Bundesliga and Serie A as bad leagues. And again, I'll mention this again. All the best players are now going to England, to Spain, or Germany and Italy, and in terms of transfer movement. I think that the Premier League is a great league, and I think he's highlighting this with this statement, on top of like all of the other stuff that I'm saying here. And the reason me and a friend of mine got mixed up is because he thought I was suggesting that. That the only people calling these farmer leagues are the Premier League fans. So it was a little disconnect there. I would have as much issue, if not more issue, if fans of the Premier or fans of the Bundesliga and Serie A started calling the Premier League a farmer league. I don't think any of these top leagues are farmer leagues, but I think there's a lot of truth. There's a lot of truth said when it comes to the Champions League success and the way that it's being run in England versus Germany. But the last bit is I think what people really need to focus on. And I'll say it again, stop looking down at your other leagues just because it's not your favorite. And I think it is so beautifully stated. And when I saw this, I said it, say it again for the people in the back, because I don't think I haven't seen a player come out and make this type of statement before. And I think it takes courage, especially he's getting to his moment at Bayern, but hasn't got there quite yet. But the fact that he went out and says, I think it's beautifully put, and I'll give him credit. And again, this needed to be said by somebody, and somebody within a experienced point of view between the two leagues. So I think this was brilliant by him, and it's accurate and it's very truthful in what he's saying.
And speaking of that league, and speaking of Sané himself, who used to play for Schalke, they broke a 31-match losing/undefeated unwinning streak.
Yeah.
When they defeated Hoffenheim 4-0, courtesy of a hat-trick from American Michael Hope.
Yeah.
No, or Hop, you pronounce it.
I think we're calling it Hope now that they got
Hope
those 3
because
points.
he's our hope for the 2026 World Cup. And so, Kolasinac, not a world-class player, but he must have had a world-class contribution on his debut.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, he did. He was great. I mean, it's not that they won the game, because eventually I knew they were going to win eventually. Now they're only 3 points out of the relegation zone. If they get another 3, they get out of it. It's the fact that they did this against Hoffenheim. This is a team that gave Bayern Munich problems, beat Bayern Munich, and they gave problems to Leverkusen and several other big sides. And I don't understand what's going on over there. And it's really incredible that they were able to do this. But I'm so happy for Schalke. They're the worst team I've seen in the Bundesliga in a long time. So they needed that first win, and I hope they can figure out a way to keep themselves in it, because if you think of all things considered, it's a huge club that's playing like a team that doesn't have any history, and no, you have to be prideful and happy for Schalke for what they're going to do, and glad to get that first win, and we'll see what happens from there, but. Credit to the kid for the hat trick. Hopefully you see more consistency of that, and Kolasinac coming in certainly helps. And there's a lot of different pieces of this team that need improvement, but you have to feel happy for them and what they were able to do today.
And not to mention, they beat a Hoffenheim that's thrashed Bayern Munich. But a team that just barely beat them, playing beautiful football, of course, is Borussia Mönchengladbach.
Yeah.
Now, they stole Bayern's style. They went 2-0 down and ended up winning the game 3-2.
Yeah.
But large contribution to that was the leaky defense. And I've been hearing it a lot, and I'm like, oh my God, you guys are complaining, first world problems. Bayern Munich is the best team in the world. Why is there defensive problems on the best team in the world? When you watch them play, yeah, I've heard comments that Lazio may have a chance, which I don't believe. But like,
God, no.
they are so bad defensively. You would think that it's almost like they're giving teams a chance. Like, how can the team be so lackadaisical and apathetic on the defensive
It's almost
end?
like go on, man, try to beat us. It's like there's like it's like I remember in a game of this year between Arsenal and Chelsea, the Chelsea goalkeeper Mendy basically saved the ball into the attacker that was right in front of him, just trying to say, come on, let's go, try to score, and then he makes another save. But yeah, I don't know. It's again, Benjamin Pavard is not being talked about enough because he is kind of in victimness with this Bayern leaky defense, and he's the only one trying to prevent. I mean, they're trying to prevent goals. I get that, but he's contributing so much in that area, and the rest of his backline is just collapsing. And they need a move for somebody quick, because this defense, they still can win the Champions League with this, but when other teams start getting better, they're gonna have a problem with that if they can't keep clean sheets and do it. Neuer's doing the best he can. It's not on him, but two of those goals. I mean, the third goal, okay, I get it. You're not saving that strike from Neuhaus, but the first two on the break, you can't allow that to happen. It just looks bad, and maybe with Bayern Munich doing what Bayern Munich does, they'll let Lazio score a few. But Lazio has the same problems, so I don't think that really changes anything. But again, when they play a more difficult team, it may take longer than expected. Again, I expect Bayern Munich to win the whole thing, but at the same time, these concerning factors you have to weigh on sort of how they're playing, and I'm sure specifically Neuer and Pavard have to be just fuming right now, because in their back line, Pavard's the one doing all the he's contributing defensively and taking his role and sort of pushing the ball forward, and then you have Neuer, who's trying to do his best and getting conceded. I mean, at this point, Joshua Kimmich is probably better defensively than most of their backline, and he's playing in the defensive midfield position. It's like, this is a problem, and they have to find a way to fix it, or else they'll still win the Champions League. I think they'll still win the league, but it's going to be a constant issue if they don't try to address this. And the best way to do that is go and get someone in the window while it's open.
And it's kind of scary because they spent 80 million on Lucas Hernandez, and he hasn't been able to contribute much. At least not to the point where you can say that he's been a valuable acquisition. And you mentioned Joshua Kimmich.
Mm-hmm.
Kimmich. No.
My bad.
No worries. Even I had to click for me. And the reason that name is being pronounced more and more is because his performance this season have been unreal. And when you mentioned before how Sané said that Bayern destroyed Tottenham,
mm-hmm.
I remember that game he scored a screamer to equalize for Bayern.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not his goals that make him so good. It's not even the physical attributes and statistics. It's his desire to win. He's so aggressive on the ball. Like, he wants every minute to count.
Yeah.
On his resume, when it's all said and done, and they say, did he give his all? You're gonna know.
Yep.
He'll do amazing things to the future. And I think he's only 24 or 25,
Mhm.
which means that we are yet to see the best version of him. And I don't even know where it's going to be. Left back, right back, center, mid. Who
Mhm.
knows?
Yeah.
This guy's genuinely a like for like replacement for Philip Lahm,
Yeah.
minus a little bit of technical ability. But he makes up for that with heart because he has undeniable, desire to win. And
Yeah.
it's something your manager can't buy. You can't just say, I need more of that. Train him to do that. To put him on the elliptical and give him more desire to win. You can't train that kind of, you know?
Yeah. He's like maxed out as far as
Yeah.
his ability and things like that, and the desire to win and all this leadership and everything.
So where do you rank him in the best players of the world? Because he's undoubtedly going to make our team of the year.
Yeah, I'm gonna say this. People think he's great, and it's weird. We get into these things where a player can be underrated, but also rated by everyone. And what I mean by
Yeah.
that is this: Joshua Kimmich, by everyone's extension, is a top 10, top 7, top 8 player in the world. I think everyone agrees that Joshua Kimmich is in that top 10. And I think where he's being ranked, though, is what makes him a little underrated. And it sounds crazy for someone that everyone loves could be underrated. When you think about it, and I thought about this long and hard, I wrote an article on his performance against Mainz last week. I think it was in the middle of a week or something like that. Or it was a weekend, I forgot. And I thought about this. Neymar is my number one. I think he's got everything. And while Messi and Ronaldo are declining, he's kind of taking advantage of this opportunity. Messi still, last 2 games he's been unbelievable. I still think Neymar has a bit of separation between the two. And then when you get to 3, it becomes complicated. So, okay, you could say KDB. You could say Robert Lewandowski. You could say Thomas Muller. And Kimmich, when people talk about that, he's not really included in that conversation. I have him as the 3rd best player in the world. And here's why. So KDB, I get it. Statistically, does his thing. He's a great passer. He's a world-class player. One of the best midfielders in the world. Lewandowski, again, goal-scoring machine. He's best striker in the world by far. Muller, the guy who supplies a lot of balls for most of the Bayern stuff. And then I don't know if you could go anywhere else with that. You could go maybe with Mo Salah. Mo Salah does a lot of good stuff, both scoring and assisting. Does miss a load of chances, but you could go on and on for it. You could evaluate 6 or 7 different players in that position. This is why I have Kimmich. So it's not the goals. The goals are great, and he can supply goals, and he had a goal and assist in that game, but that's not what made him exceptional. He had a extremely high number of his passing percentage was it was through the roof, and then his tackling percentage was even higher than that. And it's like Kimmich. I'll put it this way: Muller. Who's the captain of Bayern? Is it Muller?
I believe it's Manuel Neuer.
Okay, I thought it was Muller for some reason. Okay, that's fine. So I think Muller is a great leader, but I think of Joshua Kimmich as the pulse of Bayern Munich. If you remove Kimmich from Bayern Munich, I don't know if they win the Champions League last year, and I don't know if they're capable of winning multiple Champions League trophies in a row. It's the fact that he operates going forward as good as any player at his position. He's a defensive midfielder. He's creative, and it's just the defensive aspect of his game as well, and just the way he can control the game and dictate from where he is to the people around him. Yes, he facilitates. Yes, he scores goals, but his overall game, like you mentioned, his desire, he gives it. His work rate is incredible, and he controls the game. You can have Muller and Lewandowski, and crazy as it sounds, Lewandowski is probably their 3rd best player, or Muller. It's just like with Kimmich, you get everything. You know what you're going to get every week, and I think in terms of making an impact in a game, they do not come back against Mainz without Joshua Kimmich, because he is the pulse, he is the leadership, and you see him holding everyone accountable and getting them to push forward. And then just his pure footballing ability and his intelligence is as an all-time level. And I think he's not being talked about in the top 5 even. I think he's the top 3. And I'm not going to go as far to say that it's a landslide between him and everybody below him, but I think he has a little something extra that KDB, Lewandowski and Mueller just don't have because of all the things he does. It isn't just one thing. It isn't just that he scores. It isn't just that he supplies. It's more about his leadership ability, his desire, his ball, just his ball control, the way he can supply, and I mean that goes into it well. But his leadership, again, he's the pulse of Bayern Munich. This is not the same team without him, and I think for me, he's a top 3 player in the world. And I didn't come to this conclusion until recently. So maybe my argument for this wouldn't be at my best if I had a few more days to sort of take all this into account. But while I'm writing, I just realized all the things he does that you wouldn't. So when you're writing something about the best players of the week, it usually has to do with statistics, with goals, with assists, and being those players. But the fact that you can write you can write 1,000 words on why he was the best player on the pitch, and it has nothing to do with goals and assists. And he's one of these guys who it doesn't matter if he scores, he's still fantastic. And when you think of Joshua Kimmich, you think about, again, the pulse of Bayern Munich, but also the way he can dictate the game from his position, and he's versatile. He can play center back, he can play right back, he can play defensive midfield, and I believe you could put him in an attacking midfield position, he would still thrive. It seems like it's nothing you can't. He just doesn't have any considerable holes or weaknesses, where in other players you can see situations. Every big game he shows up, every small game he shows up, and he's leading this team and trying to get the best of everybody. So I think at this point, I think he's the third best player in the world, and he can only go up.
That is true. And what is his ceiling in comparison? That he doesn't have the shooting ability of Lothar Matthäus, no. I don't believe. But is he a unique player? Do you think that he's just paving his way to become the first of his own class? Or do you think do you think he has remnants of like a previous legend in the game that we can compare him to and be like, was he as good as that player or better? Is he the player you think of when you think of Joshua Kimmich?
It's a weird one because I don't think there is one. I think he's starting his own thing because you can look at Lord Matthäus with some of his abilities. You can even look at Iniesta and Xavi, the Barcelona duo. He has certain qualities that have at least some qualities that exist in some of these players, but it's just like he's taking individual ones and putting them together. So I think he's a huge ceiling. I think he'd go down as by the end of this, he could be one of the best defensive midfielders ever. People that know me know I love the defensive midfield position because I think it doesn't get enough credit for what it is, and it takes a lot to be able to contribute into attack and defense. And he does that particular thing at a higher level than anybody playing right now. But it's as good as he is attacking wise, and as talented as he is, and as intelligent as he is, and how much of a leader he is, the way he can adapt to defensive situations while playing in that position, I think is just incredible. So I don't think there's one or two or three different players that he even seems like. You could say there's a few players maybe he has some similar qualities to, but he's more of a player that you have multiple different players that he has a little bit of this, and this, but he doesn't have one. His prototypically speaking, he's not like a certain player. He's, I think, kind of in his own world in terms of sort of the prototype of his abilities.
But another midfielder that plays right next to him that has a lot of potential, especially in the German national team, is Leon Goretzka. Yeah. Now, he scored a belter against Borussia Mönchengladbach.
Unbelievable.
But they still lost the game.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not his fault because he's been playing like a midfield pivot, a world-class midfielder for the last minimum two seasons.
Yeah.
Now, do you think he's underrated? Or do you think that he should be considered in the top 10 players right now?
This season, he's in the top 10. If you're speaking generally, is he a top 10 player? Probably not yet. He's probably top 15 though. But he's in a wonderful class with other players who aren't quite in the top 10. So I think he's got everything in his bag to sort of get up there. A lot of it is he's really underrated. Their Champions League campaign, he been one of their best players. Again, it's one of those things where you see the goal he scored against Gladbach. It was not just the fact that he scored that goal. It was he created the play. He distributed the ball, and then it got back into him. He takes one touch. He kind of he spins through the defender and then hits a rocket in the top corner. So no, he's underrated. They got him for a very cheap price from Schalke. Again, one of those players that Schalke just kind of let go. And I believe he was a free transfer, and it's really incredible what he's been able to do at Bayern Munich. And I mean, him and Kimmich in the midfield are as important as anybody in that team.
And in their absence, their injury, what would happen to their Champions League hopes, their treble hopes?
They would not win the Bundesliga. It's weird because I actually think for Bayern Munich, the Bundesliga is going to be more challenging for them than the Champions League. Because when you go into the Champions League games, they're just so much more talented than anybody else that they'll see. Unless they get PSG in the quarterfinals or something. Again, I'm on this. I'm still going to ride this bandwagon. They're the only team that can beat them right now because I can't think of a lot of others, even with all the defensive issues that they might have. The Champions League seems straightforward because they're overwhelmingly the best team. It's different in the Bundesliga because it's a case-by-case basis, and they're playing teams that even though they're losing to Bayern, have played them and know how to play them in a certain way and making them do what they wanted to. And Gladbach allowed Bayern to play them into their hands based on the way they were playing. And I think they don't win the Bundesliga without those two. They can still win the Champions League, but the Bundesliga is not. It's a non-start without Kimmich and Goretzka. And I think those two are even more important than Davies. Davies is incredible, but again, I'm going to say what I say about him, the same thing I say about Trent Alexander-Arnold, the same thing I'm going to say about Theo Hernandez. They all can defend. They just can't defend well enough. You saw the Juventus AC Milan game. You saw Federico Chiesa just target him and go at him, and it was ineffective. He couldn't do anything. And then you look at some of the games. Trent had a really bad game the other day where he lost possession so many times and had a really hard time marking his man. And then Davies, again, Newhouse kind of went at him too, and a bunch of those guys, and he couldn't do what he's expected to do defensively. Going forward, none of these players have any problems. So it's just like he's even like so all these players, I think, in that mold have issues with that. And if Davies, and I'm not blaming this on Davies, if Davies could defend at the same level or similar level to Benjamin Pavard or somebody who's maybe a little less, they'd be so much more dangerous because when you attack Benjamin Pavard, he's with you the whole time. He's fast, he's quick, and he can push. Davies can push, but not the rest. So if Davies could defend at a higher level, it would be much more difficult to break them down because Davies is already a threat offensively, but defensively he's not. None of these guys are bad. They're just not to the level you'd like to see someone at that position. If you could just make it, obviously it's like 70-30% in terms of their ability. If you could just improve the defense enough so it's comparable to what you do on the other side of the ball, I think it would change dramatically what Bayern are capable of doing.
Let's see. But speaking of a defender that Bayern are letting go, David Alaba is in just total anarchy with Bayern's hierarchy.
Yeah.
He's on his way out.
Yeah.
One of the clubs rumored is Real Madrid. Now, I want your take on whether or not that's the right outfit for him and whether he's making the decision to leave the best team in the world.
Yeah. I mean, he's obviously done so many great things for Bayern, and I think they both should be respected. Bayern, they just need something better than what they got right now. And I understand letting go of somebody who's still associated with the same team, and I get it. You want better defenders, so shipping another one out isn't going to help your situation. But I think David Alaba, as far as what he was and where he is now, it's just not the same. He's not the same defender. There's been a few teams looking at him. I think Real Madrid makes the most sense just because you already have Varane over there and you have Mendy and you have a bunch of other pieces where he doesn't have to be the most important or the primary part of that defense, where if he went for like a Manchester United or Liverpool, he would basically be the primary because Man United has decent defenders, but they don't have a great one. So he would become their best defender, or not their best defender, but the defender they rely on in these big spots. And Liverpool, without Van Dijk, at least for now, he'd be forced into that role. He's perfect as a secondary, not secondary, but like a number 2 option center back. So Varane there, he wouldn't have to take on the big responsibility. But for Real Madrid, I think it makes sense. They need to find some way to turn this thing around. I know they're having a decent season, but they're just not what we expect from Real Madrid. So Alaba would definitely change that. But to getting him for free I think they're getting him for free, is an amazing deal. I think it will help them long term, and I think as long as Varane is there, that's the best move for him. I see that as a much more logical move than some of the other ones in the England and others.
Speaking of potential world-class defenders, let's move on to the Premier League. Ruben Diaz from Manchester City. This past week has just been a revelation in the eyes of those that didn't really see him as a good signing for Manchester City. Now he's looking like a bargain, and he was not cheap. I believe he was at 60 million for Manchester City.
Yeah.
But he's living up to it. Now we cannot get ahead of ourselves and say that he was worth the 60 million yet.
No, not yet.
They're yet to win a competition bigger than the Premier League. They are the League Cup champions. They're undefeated, I think, for 4 seasons now in the League Cup. But that's not what Manchester City was designed for. The financial takeover was to win a Champions League.
Yep.
Do you remember back in the day when they were like, we're going to get Kaká, Robinho, we're going to buy all the best players?
Yeah.
The aim of that all was to win a Champions League, and they have never come closer than the semifinal. And in the last few seasons, they're actually regressing to quarterfinal finishes. Now, do you think that he's what is going to push them to the next level? Because before, they were making defensive mistakes against Lyon. 2 mistakes cost them the whole thing. Or do you think that he's just enough to like keep them in the elite, but they're not a world-class Champions League contending team yet?
I don't think him individually can overpower Manchester City to that level yet, but he is on the verge of world-class stardom. Defensively, I mean, he's just been perfect for what they needed. They also their collective defense isn't. And I don't want to overspeak because I have seen them, but I haven't seen them as much as somebody who's watching the Premier League every week. And again, I do my best to try to watch those games when they're on. It is my understanding that defensively is something that they have had an issue with the last couple of years, including this season. So because of that, and again, I could be totally wrong on that, but I just want to be fair because I don't want to speak on something that I may not know totally 100% about. But I think Diaz is so good, and I think in the next couple of years he's going to get so much better. But I think it's hard to ask a 22-year-old to overpower, overpower defensively an entire team. I think it'll certainly help, and I think he's got all the potential to be just that monster. And it's always difficult to ask someone to overpower just an entire situation. De Ligt was kind of asked to do it last year, but again, I think De Ligt is in his own class. I would put him a tier behind De Ligt. I would put him in the Willie Oban, the Opacano, the Roger Ibanez, the Mancini, that class. And I'm sure I'm missing some players that are good. But those are the few. But I think he's just a tad behind where De Ligt exists, but he's right there. I think he can push into that tier 1 if he keeps improving, and he doesn't allow the credit he's all of a sudden getting put to his head, because this has really been an outstanding signing for them. The price tag is the price tag, but in terms of what they got, I think it's a really high number of. Whatever, but you get what I'm saying. It's just like I think he's got the capabilities of reaching that level. The Turkish center back at Schalke is another one I would put in that class, but he's on pace to sort of crack into that class where at this point De Ligt seems to be by himself there in terms of young defenders.
Definitely, and the Golden Boy Award speaks for itself, because that's something that all these other players, what they would have to do to even come into contention for receiving one, much less actually materialize it and actually win it.
Yeah.
I don't think they're in the positions to be able to do it. Not to mention that De Ligt has actually made a wise decision by joining Juventus. They're in a defensive league that's supposedly the stigma of Serie A, and also he's mentored by some of the best defenders of all time,
Yeah.
Giorgio Chiellini, and well, maybe not the best of all time, but like a great world-class defender in his day. So
Exactly.
that was the right decision. Instead of taking all the responsibility, joining a Premier League club, joining Barcelona,
Yeah.
which would have been devastating for his career, considering last season how that ended. So he's definitely made the right decision. I feel like even Ruben Diaz has made it. I feel like it's just a matter of time before they clash in like a world-class duel in their primes, and that will be exciting to watch, especially in the future tournaments like this Euro that's coming up, the World Cup, and then what we Americans look for the most, our World Cup in 2026.
Yeah, I think Ruben Diaz absolutely has everything to be that level. But let's not beat around the bush here. He's nowhere near De Ligt at this point. I mean, it is not even close. Just that right here, right now, it's not even close. And again, Diaz can get to that level, but what the important thing of what he has at Juventus, he has a team that is designed with this. We talk quote unquote winning intangibles. They win the games they're not supposed to, and even how poor they are when the lights turn on, they find a way to win these games. And he has Buffon there, he has Chiellini there, he has Bonucci. I'm not a big fan of Bonucci. I think he's a good player, but I'm not as high in him as everyone else. But Bonucci's a good piece. And then you have someone in Andrea Pirlo who I don't think he's done much management wise at Juventus, but he just being in the room, and De Ligt is probably I think he's a type of guy who's going to be asking questions and trying to get all the information. Then you have Cristiano Ronaldo there too, so you have all this information and experience there, and then you're becoming this. And again, if you go somewhere else, he probably is, because I think he's just a super talent that he would have ended up being this level. But I think at this point, it's hard to put anyone even in that class right now. In his age group, I don't think there's even an argument right now. But again, Ruben Diaz has Pep Guardiola, and he has a lot of other experienced players who've been there, done that, won Premier League titles. And he can start to sort of gain that experience and become a little up to that level. And again, it's going to take a while before he gets that level where De Ligt is. But I think 100% he's certainly capable of reaching it. It's just going to take a little bit of time. Where right now it's just he shouldn't try to chase De Ligt. And he may not think about it that way, but he should just try to get to a level above where he is. Because if he starts to think about trying to get to De Ligt's level, it's gonna ruin his progress, and he's gonna think into it too much. He needs to concentrate on improving each day. And every time I've seen him, and most of the times it's been in the big Premier League games in the Champions League, he's been more impressive than the time before. And that's exactly what he needs, what you want to see from a defender like that, to try to improve and get to that level that we see with De Ligt.
Exactly. And speaking of Manchester City, they knocked out Manchester United from their favorite competition. Yeah. I say Manchester City, the one they're undefeated for 4 years now in the League Cup. Man United cannot be too depressed over that, because if they win their 2 games in hand, they're going to go top of the Premier League for the first time. I say first time. Realistically speaking, title contention in like 10 years. Okay, not 10 years, but like 8 years, you know? Ooh, what a rough 8 years it's been for them.
Yeah.
Fall from grace for sure. But now they're back, especially with a manager that is quote-unquote clueless and dysfunctional. Do you think they have what it takes to win this league?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they have a shot. Again, if Man United wins the league, I have to apologize to all Gunnar Solskjaer, because, well, I forgot what I called him. I called him a yes man. I've always said that, but it was on one of my other podcasts. I think I called him. I said he couldn't coach his way out of a paper bag or something like that. I used some reference that I heard from somebody else, but I'm okay with admitting that I was wrong about that. He's looked good. Again, I don't see a lot. He's doing much better. I see some tactical intuition. I just don't see a lot, and I think a lot of him is doing what the Glazers say. But they're definitely in a title race. And whether this is a particularly strong Premier League chase, it's not. But but I mean, in terms of the quality of the league and things like that. But we talked about that before. But again, I think they're in it. They're going to be very much in it. Now, I think Man City are probably going to win it because they have a sizable advantage when it comes to their manager, and their team is probably a little better. I think they're capable but I think Man United are still very much involved, and I think they're definitely capable of it. And I'm finally starting to see what people see in Bruno Fernandes. I'm still not going where everyone seems to be going with him, but it's as long as he keeps playing well and they keep their form up, it's very possible that Man United could be I think they're in the title race, to be honest. I think the title race is between Liverpool, Man City, and Man United. So no, they're in it. They're in it. I don't think anyone else is even close to being in it. It's just those two. I think Spurs had their chance and lost it. I think Liverpool are in it, but they're concerning me the way they're playing lately, because I don't know what the hell's going on there. They had the whole thing. They had enough distance between themselves and everybody else to have it in the bag, and they couldn't, and they let everyone back in it. So I think it's between City, Liverpool, and Man United. And Man United have a shot. I'll give them a shot. I still would say that you got to give respect to Liverpool. They're still the champs, so you give them a fair shout. And then Man City has the best manager in the world, in my opinion, and they're playing well. So that's another one that seriously could take it from them. So I would say that Man United are third favorites, but I still think this is going to be relatively close, and I think they're definitely involved in it for sure. I'll say this real quick before you move on. I would say they're in a space right now, like in terms of where they are in the league and how they're doing. I think it's some relevancy to Roma's title chase. I think they're in a similar place because nobody expects Roma to win it. No one expects us to win it. No one expects Man United to win it. But both of them seem to be involved in a title race. And again, I think both of these teams need a really signature victory to say, okay, we're here. But I think that's the most comparable thing from another team, that I think those two are very similar. So neither are probably going to win it, but both are capable. It just depends on everything else. But those two, I just thought of this right now. There's just a somewhat of a comparable factor between those two in terms of what their ambitions were and what they're turning into. Because Man United beats Liverpool, they're going to say, okay, we're in this now. If Roma beats Inter tomorrow, it's no hypothetical thing anymore. They'll be in the title race. So I think those. So if you're looking at this from strictly, that's the level of title race these two teams are in. But again, no one expects them to win it. But one big win puts them in a real way. Again, they'll never be the favorites the entire campaign, but it doesn't matter. The favorites don't always win it, so they'll have Man United will have a chance to win it. But I just wanted to mention that specific point because I just thought of it.
You make a valuable point with these signature victories. I've never heard it referred to it like that, but I really like it because now that I think about it, Juventus got one last week against AC Milan.
Mm-hmm.
They were top of the league, undefeated, and Juventus, although there was no Zlatan to bounce back, they beat them playing some classy football. I won't lie. Wesley McKennie and Federico Chiesa, they ended it.
Mm-hmm.
And was it not at the San Siro where everything was in the momentum of AC Milan? It's impressive.
But yes, I get that. And I gave Juventus all the credit here, but AC Milan were missing like 3-4 starters, and people don't talk about people like Salzmaker and others. Sorry, I just thought I heard my door. But just people like that. I think. Just give me 1 second.
Sure.
All right. I'm just hearing things. My bad. Just
no worries.
It's in the back of my head. I heard something. Anyway, sorry about that, guys. I think Salzmakers is really important. Someone like that, and Rebic really was lost there because I like Leao. He's not a guy who's capable of scoring the big games yet, and you need someone like Anton Rebic who can come in there and score goals. Juventus deserved the credit. They were brilliant. Weston McKennie came in and just scored right away. And Chiesa, who, as scrutinized as his move was unbelievable against AC Milan. And at the San Siro and everything, again, AC Milan won after that. So it's less important than it seemed. But again, Juventus can't lose that game because they're 13 points from the top if they do. And they kept themselves involved in this thing. And now it appears that they're going to find a way to figure themselves. But again, I don't think they're going to be able to maintain the way they're playing right now. But that was a big win, especially against an AC Milan team that's playing really well right now.
One final point to wrap it all up. Do you think that AC Milan, with their 2-0 win over, let me see,
Torino,
do you think that's the bounce back that they needed to get back on pace to win the league? And do you think that they're still in contention? Because they lost points last week at the same time that Inter did. And so if Roma were to beat Inter, or vice versa, Inter were to beat Roma, would that have any knock-on effect on the title race? Or should Milan look at it like, we're in control of our own destiny, and the only team we need to worry about is ourselves? Or should they be thinking to themselves, oh no, we've got Inter on our tails, and Juventus just beat us at home to beat our undefeated streak?
No, I mean, some Juventus fans already think Inter out just because they lost to Sampdoria. It's not right. AC Milan, I think, will win the title. I think they should be the favorites because, look, this winning a tangible thing, it comes down to losing a big game and being able to respond. Again, Torino may not be the best team in the league. In fact, they were in the relegation zone until recently, but they had picked up points in the last 2 games. They got points against Napoli. And Andrea Bellotti is one of the league's best high-scoring players this season, and his team has not scored that many goals. So even that individual matchup, you see him taking down. You take down a team like that without most of your important players, and one thing leads to another. And again, they responded. They played well. Now, if they have a game if they have 2 big games in a row, it's going to be different. But however, if Inter lose to, and Inter and Roma will be involved the entire time. Juventus will probably be involved the entire time too. But if Inter loses tomorrow to Roma, I think Roma will become the other team they should be the most worried about. And I'm not saying this because I'm a Roma fan, but if you think about it, Roma have only dropped points against big teams. If Roma stop losing points against big teams and they start getting maximum points in those big teams, then there's a serious threat from them because who was the first team to take down AC? Who's the first team to get points off AC Milan this season? Roma, who in that game for stretches, Roma completely outplayed them in the first half. And I think Roma went into that game, with whatever. But I mean, in that first half, they looked incredible against AC Milan. So I think it's going to be between AC Milan, Inter, and Roma. Juventus will be involved, but only by table standing. I don't think they're ever going to be so far up that they'll be able to actually win the title. I think it will really between those 3. But I think the four teams that are actually going to be technically in it is going to be Juventus, AC Milan, Roma, and Inter. And because I'm done with Napoli.
Yeah.
Torino. You got to beat Torino. Then Spezia. You had 67% possession. They had barely any shots, and they still made you look like crap. And then they go down to 10 men, and they equal. And then they score a winning goal. I mean, I'm just so done with Napoli. That great performance against Roma after Diego Maradona passed, and then they had some decent. And I understand there's some things that need to happen, but I think they'd be lucky to make the top 4 this season. I believe they're already 5 points from 3rd place. If they lose another one,
it's way too clustered. I don't think they're making the top 4.
They're inconsistent. They remind me of like Roma last season. Have stretches, but inconsistent. And it's again, I think they entered this title race and they were involved for a little bit, and then they just evaporated. And the way Alonso's playing right now, they could even finish below 5th. But I just don't see them as a real threat to the title race. And even if Inter beat Roma tomorrow, which I hope doesn't happen, but even if that happens, Napoli are still no threat to really, not no threat. They're a little threat. They're not a major threat to make the Champions League, because I think the four teams that are in the places that they are right now, the top four are the best four in this league this season. So Napoli's not happen. It's not happening with Napoli, but I still think AC Milan will win it. But there's Roma and Inter I think will still be involved the entire time. If Roma win, then they will be like the second favorites, just because I think at that point Inter would fall out a little bit, but it'd be between, in terms of realistically taking down AC Milan, it would be between Roma or Inter Milan. And I think Inter Milan is Roma's more likely if they win. If they lose, then who knows? But that's why tomorrow's match could have major implications on the entire thing. And you have to remember Roma's stolen point in the opener. If that's given back to them, they'd be in second place right now. So it's just, I don't know. It's going to be a fight to the finish, but AC Milan still should feel confident they can keep it going. I do think they'll win the title, but again, it's going to come down to the end as it did last season. But I think Milan should feel confident, especially after they get Zlatan back and others. They'll be in a much better shape to sort of figure everything out and win it. But it's going to be a fight.
For sure. And we're still early in the season, man. Like, we're not even in the halfway point.
Yeah, we're early, but those matches, this match, so here's another thing. Inter play Juventus and Roma back to back. So they play us tomorrow. They play Juventus. I think they play them on Saturday. So if they drop both, then Juve replaces them in that part of it, and it'll be Roma, Juve, Milan. If they win one and lose one, they're still in it, but they can't drop both. And then obviously Roma plays the derby against Lazio on Friday, but against Lazio is no threat to Roma whatsoever right now. So it's still wide open, but these particular matches have a lot of sentiment and implications on what could be the result at the end of the season, especially with everything on the line right now.
Man, but do you think any team in the top four right now can eliminate themselves from title contention in a week? What I mean by that is, like, if they lose two back-to-back games, like you say, it's not when they lose them, it's to who they lose them.
Yeah.
Not just donating points to the bottom religation clubs.
Yeah.
If you lose to Juventus, that feels like 9 points to me.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's exponential.
Look, Inter, we constantly talk about the Inter. Once they hit that first bad result, they'll start to collapse. So if they lose tomorrow and then they lose to Juventus, they're done. They're done for. They probably won't even finish in the top three if that happens, because mentally they're not strong enough to deal with such stuff like that. Because once they hit that loss, they start playing badly in the weeks to follow. I mean, this might be a different Inter team, but history tells us that dropping to Roma and Inter 2 in a row would basically psychologically be taking a knee on the title race. So again, I expect them to win one of them. Again, if they lose to Roma, I don't think they should. I think it's bad because they'll drop out a second, but I don't think they should just freak out over that. I think a Juventus. They beat Juventus, then everything is accounted for. Again, if they lose both, it's a whole different story. But Inter are because of what we know about them, are capable of falling out. I think Roma are even capable of falling out because they're not supposed to be doing this good. You know what I mean? So I would say this, though. I think Juventus and Milan is the favorites. Juventus will be involved, but I just don't think this Juventus team is good enough to win it. So it's gonna be kind of coming down to either Roma or Inter to basically threaten AC Milan in a more specific way. So I think we're not even close to the end, but these next couple of matches are really important to how everything could look at the end.
We'll have to wait and see, because this Juventus side is kind of annoying me, because that goal where Dybala backheels it to Chiesa,
it's crazy.
Crazy. And after I see that, it just blows my. I'm like, this can sound like a crazy devaluation of Juventus.
Yeah.
But they kind of feel like Arsenal right now if they don't win this title. Whereas like they just would have been like they were inconsistent and they didn't have the like mental. They were too frail mentally to win the title.
Yeah.
They have the talent. Could
No,
this?
they're in it. They're in it, but I just don't believe they can win it.
No, no, I don't think they're gonna win either. But if it comes close, I'm just gonna tell myself, "Oh my God, this is reminds me of Arsenal every single season
Yeah,
in which they get."
I'm giving them a chance. I think they have a chance at getting in back and winning it,
Mhm.
but I just think based on what I know and what we've seen from them, because yes, they played well against Milan, but they played like crap against against Torino, for example, and barely won that game. And why did they win that game? Just because
Winning intangibles.
if they don't have winning intangibles, there's no way they're in fourth place. I mean, and then again, it just depends on the situation. Ronaldo was great against, I think about Udinese. It was one of his best games of the season. And then against Milan, he did nothing. And then, but unfortunately, Chiesa stepped up. And then there's games where Ronaldo's amazing, Chiesa's terrible, or Dybala's terrible. So it's just, there's too much weirdness going on with the way they're playing their games this season that they're not going to win it, but I think they have a chance just because they're Juventus. But again, I'm fairly certain they're not going to win it. But it's not like one of those things where they're not going to win and they're not going to be in that. But they'll be involved. But in the end, I don't think they have enough to win the whole thing.
For sure, they don't have enough in the tank, and it's not the same Cristiano Ronaldo of old that could carry a team.
Yeah, and I get annoyed when people act like, because I love Ronaldo and when he plays well, I give him credit. But I get annoyed when people sort of are basing off the fact that sort of Juventus can be in it because Ronaldo is scoring goals, but they're not acknowledging that he is declining. Messi's declining. A lot of these older players are declining. So, again, a 25-year-old Ronaldo at Juventus, come on now. Juve would walk this thing. But they don't have that, and it's again, I'll mention it again. He'll play great for a couple games. He'll play awful for a week. Then he'll play great for a couple games. He'll play like it's too up and down. And I'm talking about performances, not goals. So who's going to score a goal? That's just what's going to happen. I think he'll probably win the Golden Boot in Italy. But again, I don't think that necessarily means that he's going to be their best player, or he's going to do enough to overpower everything. But you know. I mean, but still, there's a long way to go, so we'll see. But I don't think Juventus are gonna. I don't think they have a chance of winning it. But I think again, they'll still be involved. Though.
But they might not win the league, but they're obviously going to win the Champions League. Am I right? Nah. That Ronaldo plan, it died when Ajax eliminated, because they didn't look as strong since.
They were outplayed in both of those games too.
Yeah. In the first leg, they were actually supposed to be down at halftime, and then they had that sucker punch goal from Ronaldo, courtesy of Cancelo's cross.
And then what happened was after that, like a minute into the second half of that game, boom, Ajax scored.
Equalizer. That was deserved.
And then it's funny. The funny thing about this whole thing is, it's all tied up in Turin when they're playing Ajax, and who buries them? Matthias de Ligt, who signed for him a year later. He kind of did the Alisson Roma thing. Alisson lost to Liverpool and then joined Liverpool. Like it kind of reminds me of KD going to the Warriors, not because of the talent, but because of it just realized in the last couple of years in soccer we've seen a team knocks out player, star player goes joins that team the next season. So it's different, but that was not a great performance, and the Atletico Madrid first leg showed cracks, even though they ended up coming back and winning that tie. You started to see it even before that because Ronaldo wasn't playing all that well in the Champions League that season. I think he had 6 goals in that Champions League.
But most of them were in the knockouts.
Usually you'd have 6 goals by game number 3 in the group. Ronaldo we're used to it. And at that point, Ronaldo was just exiting his prime. So in my opinion, his last prime year was the first year at Juve, even though the numbers weren't as high as they are now. But he was putting dominating performances regularly, where now he's just not doing that. So when you look in these Champions League games, and again, Porto are going to be a tough team to play against. I think they have a decent chance of knocking out Juventus. But you can't convince me that this Juve team is going to go to the final or beat one of these bigger teams. You never know, never say never, but there's multiple teams in this competition left that are clearly in much better position. And as much as I like Pedro as a player, They cannot win a Champions League with him as their manager. They just can't.
Mm-mm. They might nah. Which I think he's getting fired at the end of the season.
I think
Because
he. I think he. It's so harsh because of the club legend thing.
mhm.
But if you look at Juventus games, he doesn't do any. Like he's on the sideline, but he doesn't really do anything except make substitutions. He's not instructing. He just kind of seems like he's just standing there. And I like Pillow, and it's not his fault. But this job was way above his head. He hadn't coached a game, and then he got this job. He should have got the Fiorentina job. He would have been in a much better position to be successful. And again, I think he'll be successful, but he probably won't make it through. He'll make it through the season, but he won't be the manager next season. Yeah. So, and I think Juventus have one eye open for Pep. So if he leaves or something, I don't think he will, but I don't know. It was just a strange hire to begin with, and I hope he has success in this new life of his. But this is
What bothers me is that the Pirlo appointment is a waste of Ronaldo, of a year of Ronaldo. He's getting older every season. So their goal gets harder the more they put past him.
Pilro is we're going to start from scratch. Let me get my manager. That's the type of manager he is. He's not, we need to win the Champions League. Come on. Same with, if it's a win now, if it's a win now approach, this is the worst thing you could have done.
Why didn't they get Carlo Ancelotti? My question is, I know he's at Everton. You can't tell me he wouldn't take that job. Didn't he play for Juventus? I mean, he played for AC Milan. We all know that.
No. Here's the thing with Carlo, and I understand why you would think that.
Mm.
I think there's two jobs he would never take in 1,000 years. Inter Juve, and this is Inter and Juve. He was a Roma player, and AC Milan player, and he coached AC Milan. So he has ties to two teams that hate Juventus.
Oh, okay.
Because if he leaves, it's strange because he never coached Roma. He's still a club legend in terms of a player. He's in Roma's Hall of Fame. He won all those trophies with AC Milan as a player and a coach. And so he's not abandoning two fan bases that adore him. I don't know. He's not as loved in Roma land as Capello or other people like that, but he's still a legend in both of these camps. He's not going to go to AC Milan, a team that both of these teams do not like. So, but again, I get what you're saying with Carlo. The thing is, there are other managers that were available that could have done a better job. Even Luciano Spalletti was a better choice there, and you could even there were more jobs available with these. There were more managers on the market. Pochettino was on the market at the time. I wouldn't have gone back and got Allegri. And honestly, I think Sarri would have been it may not have been the best choice for Juventus. Another year with Sarri may have gotten better. He may have gotten more of the players that he wanted to play with.
But he had a fluky season where it's like it could have gone wrong at any moment. They got eliminated as early as they could in the league, in the competition.
Yeah.
And they only won the league by a point, which I know it's all subjective to numbers here.
I get that, but you can't tell me that Pilro was the best option.
No. But that's like saying the lesser of two evils here, where it's like they're both not suited for Juventus to win the Champions League. But if I had to keep one, obviously I'd pick Sarri. But he wasn't like ideal for them either.
No, he wasn't either.
Maybe
you could recruit Zidane out of Madrid. I think Zidane is a fraud, but I think he could do a good enough job with Juventus because he had played with Ronaldo. And if you hire Zidane, you're probably getting Marcelo because they're best friends. Where Pilro hasn't worked with them before, or Marcelo, so he's not going to. You get what I'm saying. There were so many better options available. Pilro is not even one of the 10 best options at the time because he'd never coached a game going into the season. So, so it's hard to say who was right, who was wrong, but this was not ideal for really anything.
For sure. That's interesting though. Like I know he's getting fired at the end of the season because the expectation of him at that club is kind of unrealistic. I don't know why he must have taken the job knowing that it was going to be a death sentence because you got to win the Champions League with a dysfunctional Juventus that's just getting worse every season. Yeah. I like Weston McKennie. I like De Ligt getting better, but in comparison to other teams. Put them against the Bayern Munich, and it'll just be a cold.
Yeah, and what's this nonsense with him playing the ball not in his correct position? This is the reason I was at wits with him early, because the ball's most productive position is underneath, like a pair of strikers. So he's just sitting back in a false nine role, or however you want to call it, something like that. And I don't know. I just don't like the way he's playing with Dybala. Why is Dybala having a horrible season? Well, for once, he had COVID 4 times, and so just physically speaking, he's fine, but he's not at his peak. And then he's playing him in the wrong position, and I mean, what he's been done well with Weston McKennie, but I don't understand why this kid isn't starting every game. There's nobody in that midfield that's better than him, not one. Then the Juve signed Arthur for 70 million. He's barely played, and I don't know. I don't know. It's just there's just no words to really express what's really having gone on with this whole situation. But I don't know. I think Pilrow understood what he was getting himself into, but again, I think he'll get fired, and I think he'll get another good job in Italy, because they'll put that down to sort of the expectation on a first-time coach. So
For sure, but we'll have to wait and see, especially because that's a long way from now. Like, we're not even halfway through the season. Anything could happen. Juventus could go on a 20-0 winning streak.
Benevento could win the rest of their games and win the league.
I mean, Donnarumma could win the Golden Boot. Anything can happen.
I don't know about that one.
We'll have to wait and see. But next week, new challenges. Who knows?
Next week will be really interesting because so if we record on the weekend, the Inter game and Roma, Inter, and Juventus and Inter will both have been played. So we could be talking a week from now. We could be talking about how Inter are no longer in the title race, or we could be talking about how Roma actually might have a chance to win this. We'll see what happens. But I mean,
we'll have to see how Danielle feels about that.
If you look at the Bundesliga and English Premier League, I know they got a lot of good games and stuff coming up, but I mean, unless you're just doing it for fun, I wouldn't watch any of the league this week, because you have Inter Roma, Lazio Roma, and then you have Inter Juve in 1 week time. So those are the 4 games. You just got to watch those, because I think we'll see how everything happens, because it's the whole thing. Roma can't win against a big team. What happens when they actually beat one? And then you have the Inter trying to hold on to the title race, and are Juve real or not? And then we'll see what happens in terms of if they're able to beat Inter. I don't know. I have a funny feeling that Roma beats Inter tomorrow, and then Inter beats Juve, as sort of like Roma wins, the sky is falling at the San Siro, and then everyone's expecting them to get pounced by Juventus. Then they go to Juventus and beat them, and then they say, okay, we're still here. I don't know. It's just a theory. That's what I feel is going to happen. I could be dead wrong, and Inter could win both those games, or Roma could lose both of their games, or whatever. Juve could get on some weird spiral, but those are the games I think. I don't know. It'll be a totally different world we live in a week from now.
We'll have to wait and see. And for all the Inter Milan fans, we know one special Inter Milan fan that will be watching this podcast tonight.
Yeah.
You can only hope for the best.
Yeah.
All I know is that AC Milan bouncing back with that 2-0 win.
Yeah.
Over Torino was what they needed. I wanted to see that. I think every neutral fan, whether AC Milan is their team or not, maybe they might like Inter more. I think it's refreshing to see not Juventus at the top of the table.
Because you have to see, plus people want to see them respond to what happened.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what they did, and it's just better when they're good. You know what I mean? It's better. It's cool that we have Inter, Juventus, Roma, and AC Milan all potentially in within shouting distance at the top of the table. So we'll just have to see, but it's going to be interesting. That's for sure.
We'll have to wait and see. But as always, this has been another installment of the Football Apex podcast with Eliot. We'll catch you guys next week. Stay tuned.